Hello guys, I'm Orbiter, your Welsh engineer, and welcome to Man Landing tutorial. This is part of my basics to advanced rocketry. In the last tutorial, we landed on Minimus. I also shown you how to do orbital maneuvers. This time, we are going to the man with this lovely contraption. It has enough delta V, more than enough delta V to land on the man and return back to Kirby for a safe re-entry. So how do we make this? Okay. First off, get the command pod Mark II, and basically we engineer, as always, any rocket in reverse. So first thing you want to do is land safely on Kerbin. So first things first, parachute. Mark 16 XL parachute, not the small one, not the orange one. That's the one you want. And then a 2.5 meter heat shield to re-enter the atmosphere safely. Now we want a decoupler so we can decouple that stage from the rocket itself. Now you can have the shroud around it, you can put it a bit closer, it's up to you, I like it like that. Now then, let's put an X200 Rocco Max tank there, and for this I use the Poodle engine. That's more than enough that you need to land on the moon. Okay, now we need some way of actually landing. We need some landing legs. So go to the ground tab, obviously symmetry 4, so you have 4 landing legs so you don't tip over. Now you can see the ladder on the top of the command pod, you don't want the ladders in the way of that. So move them over a bit. I know it doesn't look right. It's not sort of right on the side, but it works like that for me. Right, we need a ladder now, so use the Bay Mobility Enhancer. And apparently you need 2 of these for my testings. So attach a ladder, set it as extended, so then you can see how far it goes down. Make sure it reaches the ground. And this one, as I said, you need 2. And you'll see if we use the rotate tool here, it starts to clip the rocket, and we don't want that. Kerbal may be able to get down there, but sometimes it causes the Kerbal to fall off the ladder. We don't want that. So what you can do, use the move tool, move it out slightly, down a bit as well. Okay, not too far away, just close enough so it's not clipping the parts properly. And then move the other ladder so it's in line with the top ladder. That way the Kerbals climb continuously in one motion rather than having to fall off the second ladder. Now that is done, retract the ladders and the landing legs because we don't need them. Now we need some power, otherwise we'll lose power on our way. This is where I advise, attach 4 solar panels, or no, in fact let's attach 8 and a battery to boot. Just because when we're on the dark side of the man, we'll lose power very quickly, so those batteries will hold enough charge for us. Right now, there comes the meat. We need to get this on the way to the man. The lander section will land and return to Kerbin safely. However, we need to transfer to the man. So let's get an X400 fuel tank on the rocket and a 200. Those 2 together should be enough. With the skipper engine, don't use the mainsail engine because you don't need it. The skipper engine will give you enough thrust to weight ratio to get this entire rig towards the man and help with a bit of deorbiting, getting to the orbit of a man. Otherwise, you may not have enough for landing. Right now, for the launching stage. This stage has to be over 4,000 meters per second. As you can see, I got the Kerbal Engineer Redux mod in the top right corner, showing you the total delta V. Now we can use the mainsail rocket under those 2 Rocco Max 400 fuel tanks. And this will give us almost enough delta V, but we have not got enough to get the man and return safely. No, we need some booster rockets, so let's get a radial decoupler. This time, a bit similar to 8. We're going to use a technique called onion staging. Now, I've put the decouplers on the top of the rocket. I'll explain why in a moment. Anyway, let's get the FLT 400 fuel tank, attach them on the decouplers. Now, let's use the 800 fuel tanks, attach them to the bottom. If you can't attach them to the bottom, you can either look underneath them and attach them, or you can use Alt, and that'll snap to the nodes of the building, and you can also use Alt, as I did there, to copy the part and reattach it. Now we need a rocket engine for this. I'm using the swivel engine. This will help us with control as we're launching. And some nose cones. Again, use Alt if you can't connect them properly to the top of the fuel tanks. And this is the important part. Get the fuel duct, attach it to the outer booster rockets, on the top mainly. Oh, wait a minute, let's check the staging. Staging to 7, you can see the delta we have, 7,022 meters per second total. Now attach the fuel ducts, and now you can see you've got 7,300 meters per second. That's more than enough you need for a manned landing. right now. Okay, these boosters will probably wobble about a bit, so let's attach some space tape, or struts as they're called, to the top and the bottom of the boosters. This is just to make sure they're secure and they don't flop about a bit, otherwise you may find yourself losing control as you're launching. Anyway, this is the rocket. This is what's going to get us to the man. Quite easy. Now what I've done by here as well is auto strut everything to the heaviest part. Now that'll help stop your rocket wobbling and help with the control. Okay, don't forget to label your rocket. This helps a lot, trust me. I put Lunar Lander. I always put the planet's name or the moon's name first in the name description so you know where it's going to go and what mission it's for. Okay, we need some Kerbals. Oh, who are we going to have? Let's have Oprid. We've got Valentino Kerbal coming as our pilot. T-Wig, should we have T-Wig? Who else have we got as a scientist? I feel we need to have one of each. Yeah, let's have T-Wig. Sounds like a Welsh name to tell you the truth. T-Wig. Anyway, we got our Kerbals. Let's put them in the pilot seats. Make sure we saved it. Yes, don't forget. You can also add something in the description. Like this is a Manlander, obviously. However, just in case you get confused. And now it's time to launch towards the man. Okay, first thing, SS on, full thrust, stage, and turn slowly towards your right or east on the nav ball. And that's the right on the nav ball. Don't forget, north has to be pointing down on the nav ball for you to turn to the right. Okay, keep an eye on the staging. You see the booster engines are quickly going down, emptying out. Also note, when you see the atmospheric effect on the rocket, slow your thrust down a bit. Right. You notice the decoupling of this now as we come to the end of the boosters. As they finish, you see they peeled away, and that's why I put the decoupler on the top. They seem to peel away rather than heading inwards and possibly hitting your rocket. That seems to work quite effectively, so I suggest you do that for your future builds. Right, after you get to 100 kilometers, now you should know this, create a maneuver node to circularize your orbit so you have a guide. Use the SAS to point at your maneuver node. And as always, say if your maneuver node burn time is 1 minute, you burn 30 seconds before the maneuver node and 30 seconds after. I think I was a bit late starting this burn, but that's okay, as long as you're really close and you know you're not going to enter the re-enter atmosphere, then you'll be fine, so don't worry. As you can see, my orbit isn't perfectly circular, but you don't have to worry. As long as the apoapsis and periapsis is in space and you're in a stable orbit, you'll be fine. Okay, now go ahead, target the man. If you want to know where to create your maneuver node, just look through curbing towards the man, and then the point where the man appears over the horizon of curbing, that's roughly where you want to make your maneuver node. Okay, so once you've done that, check the periapsis of the man encounter. Alright, now move the maneuver node around until you get your man height. I'd suggest about 50 kilometers or so, between 40 and 60 kilometers. It seems to be best to get into orbit around the man. And obviously, if your maneuver node is, say, 2 minutes, burn 1 minute before the maneuver node time and 1 minute after the maneuver node time. This does get complicated when you're doing this in multiple stages, however, since we got a single stage, it's fine. Okay, once you come close to the end of your maneuver node, feather the throttle slightly until you get close to where you want your maneuver node to be. As long as your man periapsis is about between 40 and 60, you'll be fine. Anyway, ignore the flashing of the orbit lines. You get that from time to time. As long as your man orbit is fine, I think you'll be alright. Okay, one important note as you're approaching any body, when you cross over the sphere of influence, as you see by here, the game normally slows down time to 50 if you're time warping, as you can see, 50 times. And that's important. What I've done by here, I've slowed down time a bit more because sometimes when you transition to another sphere of influence, then the orbit height changes quite drastically. But if you time warp slower, it seems to be much better and you don't get that weird effect. Anyway, let's create a maneuver node. And to do a circularized orbit, that's easy enough. Just create maneuver node on the periapsis, make the thrust go retrograde this time instead of prograde, to reduce your speed to get into orbit around the man. And you can see it takes a lot less delta V than it does around the man. This is similar to what we did around Minmas. Okay, by here, I do a mistake. I hit Z instead of X to kill my thrust. Okay, this has lowered my orbit, and I was going to edit this out, but I thought I'll leave it in just in case you do it. Now, some of the mountains can be, I'm not sure it's 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers high on the man, but just in case, so we don't hit the surface, point prograde, and just boost until your orbit is, perhaps I've done it to 30 kilometers here. That's fine for what we need. And now to choose a landing spot. Okay, so the man is full of craters. Now you see loads of little craters, but what you want to do for the first landing, head for the larger craters because they have larger flat surfaces on them. They do have mini craters inside the large craters, but as you can see, you have more flatter areas, which makes it a lot easier to land. Right, and what I'm going to do by here, I've planned where roughly going to land, and I'm going to stop the burn just before that. Except that the stage ran out by there. So let's stage it, and again, press a bit more. Because what we're going to do here, when we're heading down towards the mount, we want to kill our velocity slowly. And we need a bit of overshoot for that, because we'll land a bit closer to where we're planning to land. It's not an exact science landing here, although I suppose you could work it out if you want to. But right now, we are coming in for landing, guys. So extend those landing legs and concentrate. You may have noticed as well, I've orientated the nav ball so the blue is on the top and the brown is on the bottom. That's to make it easy to control. Anyway, what we're going to do here, and make sure you're pointing retrograde, by the way, with the SES. At 25 kilometers, kill your thrust to under 150 meters per second. Right, at this point, I realized that we're going to overshoot the landing spot that I've chosen. So what I did about 20 kilometers, killed our speed down to almost 0. The reason for that is, once you kill your velocity down to 0, you'll do a straight down drop. Right, by here, what we have planned seems to have worked, and we are falling straight down. Now all you have to do is control your velocity to make sure you're not dropping down too fast. Make sure you know where the sun is so you know where your shadow is going to appear, because without radar, this is hard. You can see the shadow there. That's going to be helpful as your guide. You can also enable scatterer, terrain scatterer in the menu, but however, we're going to skip that and use the shadow as our guesstimation of what height the rocket is at. At this point, I'm trying to keep the speed about 50 meters per second, but as you get quite close, you can see you start to see the rocks with the scatterer, the terrain scatterer. We want to keep the speed down. A thing to note is that some rockets burn a lot slower than others, so sometimes you need to make sure your speed is down quite low as you get close to the surface. And always make sure that you impact the ground at less than 5 meters per second, otherwise you'll bounce. And we did not bounce too bad at all. We have landed on the man, guys. Let's go out on EVA. Okay, so now that we have Valentina on EVA, we can show that the ladder did work as I expected. I was worried about that when I first built that, thinking that perhaps the Kerbals might fall off it. I was too close to the rocket, but that seems to be just fine. Anyway, getting Obfrid out on EVA. This is probably where you can have a lot of fun with your Kerbals, because the EVA packs allows them to fly around, and you can go quite fair distance. Anyway, let's get Tiwig out on EVA. She's gonna jump out. And let's plant a flag. What are we gonna write on this? Some awesome message that we used to change all of Kerbal kind. Or is it gonna be something simple like man landing? Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Yes. Now what? Obviously, well, let's go back home. Yeah, we haven't got enough food to stay here all the time. Right, back in the rocket. Alright, launching from the man is the same as on Kerbin, except you don't have the atmosphere. So as soon as from launch, you can tilt over as much as you want. Normally, I suggest going to about the 45-degree angle as we did by here. Wait until your periapsis is about... What did I do it at? I think about 20 kilometers will be fine. Make sure that you're clear of any mountings, and obviously then create a maneuver node to circularize your orbit. You don't need to be in a really high orbit, because you're not trying to land, you're not trying to avoid from landing sideways. You just want to get into orbit, and then make a maneuver node to head towards Kerbin. And look at that gully over in the distance. Yeah, it makes you think, what if you use the landing techniques, bring a rover to the landing spots, rove through the gullies, and perhaps build a base on the edge of a cliff. There is so much you could do on KSP, and that's before you go into career mode. All this is done in Sandbox. Right, now, how do you get back to Kerbin? To return back to Kerbin, look at Kerbin from the man, and then go head down towards the man with the Kerbin on the right side at a 45-degree angle. Place a maneuver node just to the spot I have, and just go prograde on the maneuver node until the orbit height comes lower at Kerbin. Now you can adjust the position of the node to try to get the lowest point, but as you can see, we should have enough fuel. It's only about 268 meters per second, and as you probably noted, we were entering the atmosphere at just under 30 kilometers. That is perfect for re-entry, and don't seem to get my rockets blowing up. If you go really steeper and enter the atmosphere really fast, it's a possibility that your rocket or your capsule explodes, even with the heat shield, so bear that in mind. Anyway, coming up on the maneuver node again, burn half before and half after. We've got 12 seconds for this burn, so 6 seconds before and 6 seconds after. You can start your burn a bit earlier. And as you see, I've probably done it a bit late, but what I do here, as you get close to the end of your maneuver node, kill the maneuver node and just thrust in the same direction as you were pointing slowly until you get, look at that, we've got 25 kilometers. I think that'll do actually. So let's go ahead and return. Okay, as you may know, we've got one more stage to go to decouple the rocket from the capsule. Don't decouple it here. Because the decouplers have an ejection force, it's possible that that will alter your orbit, and you may miss Kerbin, or you may enter the atmosphere too steep. Okay, make sure that you're pointing retrograde, use the SAS obviously, and make sure the nav ball is in surface mode. It should be because you're entering the atmosphere. And look, there's a KSC under there. And when you enter the atmosphere, then you can stage, because it doesn't alter your height. But if I knew we were passing over the Kerbal Space Center, I would have reduced our height slightly. Perhaps we would have landed the Kerbal Space Center. But never mind. The Kerbals are returning safely. And you see the heat indicators are appearing on the heat shield and the ladder. I did not think about that part. Comes with the capsule and is just poking out to the bottom of the heat shield. It's getting really high. Please do not explode. Okay, it seems that we've slowed down enough that the heat is no longer at the danger point for a heat shield or a ladder. You can also see on the heat shield tab that I've put up there, the ablator is still going down. It's taking it down for almost 200, just over 200 ablator. So that just proves that you do need a heat shield, at least from returning from the moon. Okay, our Kerbals are at hypersonic speeds, slowing down to supersonic and then subsonic, creating a boom over the ocean. One thing you can do here, if you look at the heat shield, I didn't realize this, you can jettison the heat shield. Now that the parachute is not shown red or yellow, we can deploy it because it's safe. And oh yeah, the heat shield is still clinging on to us because we're traveling too fast in the atmosphere. We are slowing down though, and that parachute should be enough. At about 1,000 meters on the height indicator, the parachute should open up, so you're safe. You can physics time warp by here. And there goes the heat shield after we had jettisoned it. Hitting the ocean, being destroyed, being part of the wildlife. Anyway, if you enjoyed this tutorial, found it helpful, crank that like button like an engineer. And next tutorial, I think what we'll do is build a space station, or a very basic one at least. And look at that. Valentina's using the ladder to get under the ocean. That'll be an interesting build. Anyway, subscribe if you want to view more of these tutorials. I'm Orbator. Trust me, I'm an engineer. I'll see you in the next video.